Nightmare.
Yeah, nothing like when Murphy's along for the ride, right?
Oh gosh, IT when you need them. Good to
I
see you, man.
know.
Thanks.
Good, good.
Starting off with a little bit of flim flam there, left right, bob weaving.
Gotta love it. You gotta almost love the metaphor we could fold in with that, you know? How do we start off and then come out and stick the landing and get to what we need to talk about?
Amen. That or crash and burn. Get back up. One of the two.
Exactly. Sometimes just like roll and pivot back to. Uh, so thanks everybody for joining us. Apologies again for the little technical glitch, kind of nature of the beast with this virtual world we're in now. But we're so happy now that we're on Keir's Instagram, but this was going to be on Bigvision. And just about Bigvision quickly, we're a community of young adults in recovery, and we provide community recreational activities, a lot of connection, a lot of just lifestyle outlets for people in recovery, because that's really one of the most critical aspects of being able to sustain a recovery. Sometimes it's not about just getting sober, but what are you going to do when you get sober, and how do you stay sober? So that's what we're all about. And very fortunate to have some, what do we call them? Maybe almost like ambassadors, people who really represent what that paradigm of recovery and lifestyle is like. And Keir's a great example of that, somebody who's really living life. And so we're very honored to have him and grateful that he's agreed to come on by and chat with us a little bit about his recovery, paradigms of recovery, and what we're going and getting on. So with that, kind of just turn it around to Keir and say welcome, and maybe if you could give us a little background. I could do the intro thing, but I will, smash it more. But just real briefly, you know, we kind of have a lot of cross DNA going way, way back. Both people of the maybe portfolio careers and going back with Burton Snowboards back 20, 30 years, a long time. And we just kind of went on our own ways. But Keir went on to become World Super Pipe champion, X Games finalist, just a storied career in snowboarding. Then a really great entrepreneurial run, just a very impressive human being and perseverance and resilience. And so I will turn it over to you right now. So thank you again for being here.
No, I appreciate it, Peter. Thank you for having me, and just like you said, all that you're doing with Bigvision, right? Like just from you and I connecting in November, which seems like forever ago, but actually I went back and checked. I was like, when was the actual date? It is cool just to hear, your journey, and just from where I was at that point in time to have connected and just to have created a friend, right? And to have just a framework that you would give me and just kind of ways of thinking and confirming just a lot of the thoughts and everything that I had in my head that I was going through. It was huge and it was life-changing. So to know that you're helping kids through the Bigvision program and organization, especially young kids that, have the whole world in front of them, and just, it's easy to get lost. I know, because I was lost. So appreciate all that you're doing for them and myself and everyone. Yeah, and background, it's I grew up in Pennsylvania, small little town. It's kind of single mom. My parents got divorced when I was 8, which was kind of brutal. They lived on the same mountain then as when they were divorced, so that created all sorts of drama and chaos. But to combat the chaos, I fell in love with snowboarding and BMX and skateboarding, and kind of locked into that, right? Like I have ADD and dyslexia and a whole bunch of other things, but it was like, I think that gives you the ability to also, when you find something you love, to really like dive into it. And my mom just had always instilled this idea of anything's possible, right? So this, if you want to make money snowboarding, which at the time was like pogo sticking or maybe even less, sure, why not, right? She's kind of knew our personality. So having 3 other brothers and just, I guess a place and time when you're growing up where you could kind of get away with anything. I mean, we were pretty good kids. We didn't really have many rules, but it just allowed for a lot of freedom, right? Freedom of mind and thought and creating. And I mean, we didn't come from money or anything like that, but it was just, you never felt lack, which was also pretty cool. A huge testament to my parents for that, of just, instilling that anything's possible, even though kind of like the stuff was kind of messed up. So yeah, that was kind of the early stages, and then fell in love with snowboarding, and that really kind of confirmed what my mom had always said about like anything's possible. going from working at the Playhouse trying to make money for a season pass to then getting sponsored by Burton Snowboards, and then like meeting up with people you looked up to. And I mean, I remember just driving across country, and this actually maybe Stevie Alters, like running into like random pro snowboarders, off the Route 80, driving across country, just like the way that the world works when you start to really dig into your passions, which is, I'm a big proponent of having dreams and big visions, and then also the micro steps that allow you to accomplish that. So from snowboarding, then I got into TV hosting, which was awesome. Sal Masakela, give, huge props to him. He definitely brought me under his wing and taught me everything. And, just to see the legacy that he's had and is creating through us and hopefully other people was awesome. And then really business was what lit me up. I'd always been slinging candy in school and trying to figure out if I could buy something for 10 cents, sell it for $1, and maybe later in the day, $2. That was just, I loved that aspect of it. It was fun, right? When you have no money, to be able to create even a few dollars is a lot of fun. So to get the chance to work with the Friends crew and just to create a movement in the vessel of business, but really it was more about the movement and championing that life's better done together, and that there's no I in friends, and that even when you're competing at your highest level, that you're better when you collaborate with people, or you're better when you're challenged by your peers, in that kind of that mindset of just kind of expanding what we were doing, both snowboarding and then in business, right? Looking at things, how can we do this differently? How can we deconstruct the way it's been done, knowing that the way it's been done was created by someone else, right? How do we deconstruct that and maybe do it a different way? And I love that in snowboarding because, it is an artistry like that, and life's an artistry, right? So it was cool to have that platform as well. And it was interesting as I look back, because I had always said, like, I worked really hard. I persevered, and it kind of came from middle class in a way, but like in reality, I think there was a ton of work, but I'd never really gone through like failure, right? Like that, like the level of failure that like shakes your world, and you just feel completely hopeless and destroyed. And I'd be like, oh, I fail more in a day than you fail in your life. And it's kind of like, yeah, because your fails aren't really fails. At least the way that I constructed in my head. And when Friends started coming to an end, I had already, I'm a very pendulum swinging person, right? So I was straight edge till I was 21. I'd seen what drugs could do. I saw what they did to my father. I saw what they did to my older brother. And I just didn't want any of that, right? So I surrounded myself with people that were passionate about action sports, but also were sober, right? So I think it was probably too much.
Not too many of them back in those days.
Not too many, but it's also like, it was a level of, I think, even that was a level of chaos where it's like, we're going to slit your tires because you drink. It's kind of like, whoa, that's a little aggressive. But again, my personality is really kind of going all in. So, and I'm also more of a shy person by nature. So when I did make the switch into, drinking and then eventually doing drugs, there's aspects that I would say that loosened me up and allowed for layers of expansion, and just getting more of, confident and, some fundamental, like kind of life skills that were almost blocks before. But I think like with anything, when you go all in, then you go all in. So after about 20 years of doing drugs and elevating through the levels of hardcore nature, and having done pretty much all of them, that combined with then friends imploding and lawsuits and kind of losing everything, it was just, I'd hit the moment of true, like, I need to figure this out. And along the way, right, like I have amazing humans around me, supporting, I went to rehab about 3 years ago, which was the most magical experience ever, and very in line with a lot of the ideologies of yourself and me. And it was good, but it was just, I was speaking to my girlfriend this morning of like, what triggered the transformation, right? Like I for a long period of time, like a real, 5 years, I knew that, to use the Tim Ferriss analogy, like the big domino, like if I could get sober, make some changes in my life, then like anything would really be possible again. But I also knew that the path that I was on, I get an idea, I'd be excited about it, and then I just go get high and implode everything, and then like kind of reset. And that was the path of, even when I look back, of snowboarding, was go all in and then kind of like not explode, but like explode a little bit, like this, like build tension, release, build tension, release.
Pressure relief valve.
Yeah, and I think there's the magic of that when it's in creativity, right? Like you're building something in the energy and you're getting people involved and you're pulling off the impossible. And my life is definitely littered with a lot of that, but you can also get that same feeling by just blowing things up. So I think when things start to get difficult, for me at least, it was, let's just blow some stuff up. I didn't think about that in my head, but in hindsight, you know, mixture of that and then also stripping away, I think, a lot of the gifts I've been given without really noticing it. Meaning, like, snowboarding is a very meditative sport, right? Like, you're out in Mother Nature. You're on a chairlift, you're thinking, you're like super zoned into something healthy, your friends, the little like ecosystem. So when I stopped, even though it was a long period of time, like I think that started to also take root, right? Like just kind of sitting in your office and not really remembering all the energy, work, and like nature and just grounded aspects that had been built into my life. So yeah, when I you know, I guess fast forward to the question of the transformation, it was definitely, it was pretty rad. Meaning, like, the amount of work that went into the last year and a half, as I like thought about it, was like, whoa, like there's, like anything in life, you're doing step by step by step. Like I remember talking to Jake Burton, and I was like, I forget the exact question, kind of like, would you do this all over again? And he was like, no. And I was like, what do you mean no? Like, it is like, no, like it's just the journey. Sometimes if you go too far out, and this goes back to like the whole big vision, you have to have it, but the tactical steps, there's so much on that path that if you knew it all at once, you would never be able to do it. Right. And I think that's, as I look back even to the last year and a half, it's like, whoa, to go from CEO to delivering food for Grubhub and DoorDash, and no brain, really, my brain not working, was just crazy. Right. And then the steps back of like, okay, how do you create the hope? So it's, yeah. And we intersected during that path, during that time. Right. Which was really cool.
Totally. There's so much to unpack there. That's so really great to talk about in so many ways. Because, yeah, I think there is, you know, especially with a sport like snowboarding or other lifestyle things, there's something about the flow of it. And there's a metaphor to life that could be taken from that. And, yeah, about those conversations we had, one thing that always fascinated me about you and the conversations was how you were tapped into that flow and kind of seemed to get that greater paradigm of, you know, what's really going to fulfill, what is it really all about? Because as you know, and as a lot of you maybe who are listening, you know, recovery communities and culture sometimes has like a one size fits all approach. And when, especially when we look at alternative sports, alternative lifestyles, sometimes those two don't jive. So it's a more unique individual, especially going back in time, find somebody who can kind of find their own path and bushwhack, you know. Yeah. And she did that. So kudos to you. And that's great. And now the question is, you know, how do we fill in the hole? Where do those...
How do we what?
What's that?
Well, how do we what? Fill in the holes?
How do we now fill in those holes, you know, where those brush strokes kind of left the areas. You know, now what do we do? Now we're here. And there's a lot to talk about with that, I guess, you know.
No, I mean, I even just, you know, I think that for me, the biggest pivot, right, or question, even as I was reflecting on it, is kind of said, like, what switched it, right? When you go to like, whether it's dieting, whether it's I'm going to quit sugar, whether it's I'm going to go to the gym, whatever it is, there's a decision point, right? And I think that the tough thing when you're on drugs is, and I shared this with you not too long ago, of like your brain starts to change, right? The way that it functions, the way that it thinks starts to morph, and I tried about to keep going. And it's because of that, it's your new normals keep shifting, right? So then you kind of like you're sliding along this path, and even like things that felt normal before, you'd look at, you'd be like, that's insanity. It's like, oh no, that's normal, right? On all levels. So I got to change my door. So, with that is, I think that one of the moments that really kind of stood out to me was I was with a friend, and this is like in like the super not, this is like the dark days. But I was like with my friend, completely out of my mind, and they just looked at me, and not in like a judging way, because I think as humans we're smart enough to know, like, surround yourself with people that aren't going to judge if you're doing things that are questionable for yourself, right? So it's kind of like, I remember that was kind of like one of my gates of like, and I still think it's a gate, but it's like, if you have judgment, I can't hang out with you.
Right.
But they were just like, so is this how you're going to be when you're 80? I was like, what do you mean? Of course not. And I remember telling the story, and it was just kind of like, and again, there was no judgment, no nothing. And it's kind of like, well, what's going to change? And I was like, I don't know. And like, for some reason, there was just enough of like a wedge to be like, oh man, like, if I don't want to be on drugs the rest of my life, like, I have to go through the journey. And granted, I had no idea what the journey was, but like, I knew that change had to happen. And it was like I said, just enough of a spark for me to just go, oh my gosh, like, I don't want this. And especially even in that state, like you and I talked about, like the state of, I think when you're beat up, it's like you have no self-esteem, you have no self-love, you have like all the like the things that allow us to thrive and have a higher frequency, like they're gone, right? So I think that's the hard part for even people that are like supporting you going through it, is like, how do you meet somebody, how do you hold space for them when you really don't understand, because it makes no logical sense, right? It's kind of nothing really makes sense. But when you're in that, right, and it's like, even when I think back, it's like, okay, I just gotten divorced, so pretty much I'd failed myself and failed my family, just like how my dad did, which I hated him for. I lost all money, which I'd always tried to be like really smart of like, okay, let me like do this smart, let me invest, like, I lost a ton of friends, I pushed away a ton of people. So it's like you take all of that, you take them, like, yeah, no wonder you're using, because like it's either that, it's like a self-preservation, like it's either that or put a bullet in your head. So it's this, it's this whole like thinking straight it's not there. Then add on top of that all the chemical aspects that you're adding on top of what your brain's already feeling. So I think for me it was like that, and then also just it's a layer cake, right? So I think that coming off of my meds, I was on Adderall and Klonopin, heavy doses of Klonopin for 10 years. And I never really knew how bad they were, because I was like, doctor, like, I'm paying you money, give me my medicine. It's like, no respect for whether it was good or bad. And I really didn't want to hear what he had to say. I was just like, this is legal, you're prescribing it, give it to me. And when I moved to Texas, they don't, like, it's pretty much impossible to get prescriptions there if you're not already grandfathered in. So I remember I'm sitting in Texas. This is whatever. It's like 8 months ago. Everything is gone, and I can't get meds. And I'm like Googling, like, what happens when you come off Klonopin cold? And it's like, don't do it. You can die.
Bad news.
Like,
yeah.
Yeah, and it's like 10 years of massive dose, like starting dose. I never increased it, but I attribute that as a huge helper, because it slowed my brain down enough to, like, it literally became day by day. Like minute by minute, actually. Like each day, I remember talking to my girlfriend, each day was like a month. Like, it's like it was the weirdest feeling, as my brain was like reprogramming itself. So I think it was, loss of everything, coming off my meds. After all, like, the shame and guilt and everything, and then being around loved ones, being my brother, I hadn't seen him. We never really hung out after he had left, at like 17. I mean, we were tight, but not tight. It was cool to be in a house where it's just like nothing but love, like pure, just, not like, oh, this is what you get or anything. It's just kind of like, dude, I love you. Like, if you're gonna drive the rest of your life, you're gonna drive, whatever. Like, I don't care, right? And it was just like I hadn't had that feeling for a really long time. Whether it was there or not is irrelevant. I just wasn't letting it in.
There's a good question.
So there's what?
There's a good question. Was it there, and were you letting it in?
Yeah, and I guess, Joe and I believe it's always there, right? And I think perspective is everything. I think the slowing down is what it really, I think, allowed me to start then feeling it, right? And also being real. Like at the time, you know, my girlfriend and I, we went through some crazy stuff, which usually happens when you're on drugs, and just her support, and also then me owning the chaos of what was happening. I think a lot of, you know, I did the typical like, you know, shut down and kind of make it difficult to talk about, instead of being like, okay, like here's what I did and it was lame, and just feeling the unconditional love, right? And yeah, and just literally like that those moments, right? And I think just like what you and I were talking about, of like, for me and my personality, and you know, the mindset of even flowing, that sort of stuff, I was already beat up enough. Like I didn't need somebody, for me, I didn't need to say like I'm an addict, because I already kind of know I'm struggling with some stuff. Like I don't need to say that. I also believe that it's more of, as you always say, is kind of like, you know, what's the why beneath the what, right? And
Why beneath
like,
the what, exactly.
Yeah, and it's kind of like I knew my whys, right? And I knew that those were just kind of the symptoms that were showing in the way that I was dealing with life. So for me, the energy of, you know, I just sober app, right? Like that's when you know you're struggling, right? When you got the app,
Exactly.
you got the app for help. But it was like, you know, like it had like a kind of cool, you know, statement for like being inspired, but it was still like very negative frequency. I messed up. I got to use an app now. I'm like, okay, here, you know, slap on the wrist. Okay. Like it was very defeating, and even just very subconscious. Like I know that works for people, right? Like you were talking about, like it's all about finding what works for you and knowing yourself. For me, it's more like the more daily commitments to myself, more positive looking of things, seeing like anything in life, that only really through our deep pain is the real growth, you know, come from. Just a different narrative around it, right? So back to your thing about like, you know, yeah, I think there's a lot of love there. I mean, I'm still here, right? Meaning I'm also not, I mean, I've done a lot of stuff that there's a million examples of why I shouldn't be here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whether that's driving, whether it's doing stupid stuff. Like I see many things happen to other people that, you know, they're not here. So yeah, I believe that. Now, did I feel it? No, right? Especially when you're in that state, reaching out to old friends, reaching out to people, and in having like crickets, right? And granted, I think it's tough too when you come through it, because when you're using and you're going down the path, you're not reaching out to them either. So then all of a sudden when you wake up, you kind of like reach out to people and you're like, oh, do not answer. And it's like, yeah, because you haven't talked to them in like 3 years, right? So it's like all of that, I think, awareness, for me, that's like the head trip. And when I think about recovery for people, when I think about recovery for people, it is that battle, right, of staying, I guess, the narrative around what you give meaning to.
You know, it's the second time you use that word, and that really resonates, because so much of, and this is my philosophy and belief, you know, so much of our journey with addiction, challenges that are faced, has to do with our own narrative with ourselves and our narrative with the world, kind of the storytelling dynamic. And what, back to, you know, what you talked about with that inflection point, it's always hard to, like, you know, find that out, but I think sometimes it's an easy, like, almost like cost benefit analysis to do, like, well, what did the drugs do for me, or the alcohol, or whatever that malady, whatever the behaviors were.
Mm-hmm.
And then that gives us a lot of kind of info and data on how to then move forward, because if we know what purpose it was serving, the why it was, you know, it was there, then we know what to do. And I guess, you know, another thing in that narrative that I heard through that story was a big parallel to what we're going through now also. Kind of like, you know, this, oh shit, I'm in, you know, where am I? I'm in this situation. If I project forward, it seems overwhelming. If I look back, it's like, what the fuck? And where I am now, it's, well, what's going on? And it really seems like there are a lot of parallels to what collectively everybody's going through now. Now, you know, you kind of tighten down the lens, and people in recovery going through the challenges we have in recovery on top of the challenges we're facing in COVID and having to do everything like this through a screen or whatever. I guess it brings me back to like what you just said, like what's working for you, and taking those, you know, winning dynamics that you clearly had to put you on the path you had. What are you able to like apply in what you're doing now that you took from there? Because really,
yeah, no, well said. I mean, like you said, the story is everything, right? It's the narrative in our head. I even think back to when things were really firing. Like, you think it's like, I didn't know law of attraction or manifesting or any of that sort of stuff. I just knew that if you think it, you could make it happen. Like, there was no language around what it was, but learning that later was like, oh gosh, literally it's just like manifesting in the purest sense. And I believe that like at any stage, but I think that's when that gets lost or the narrative then switches, you know, that's when it really becomes hopeless, right? And that's why I always talk about the fragility of confidence, and like belief in yourself, which again is all around the stories, right? So it's when I just think about 8 months of being in my brother's garage face down into now, right? And even between now and before, like there's a different level because I respect things a little more, which I think probably makes me more gun shy. But it is that, right? It is just that, like, okay, this happened, this is poopy. You know, how do I shift it?
I think another part that's very related with that story is then the relationship, you know, and the relationship we have with ourselves, which frames every other relationship we have. Yeah. And another parallel with what's going on now is just kind of like grass is always greener on the other side and comparing everything to everybody else, or how am I versus them. And
yeah.
And so another thing I would think would be a powerful thing, you know, look, you lived the life of like a rock star for many years. But at the same time, like when we look at things like that grass is greener and the comparison game, it's easy to point a finger and be like, oh, that guy's got everything. He's got the career, this, that. But how do we reconcile that relationship we have with ourselves that might be so flawed, which is then going to affect everything else, how we view everybody, how we view everything. And I just wonder how much that relationship with yourself has also improved, you know, going from, you know, how you might have felt about yourself in the past to how you feel about yourself now.
Yeah, I guess it's, even hearing you say that, I think I probably had a better, how do you say, I think I thought of myself probably in a lighter way before, but I didn't really think about myself, meaning like, it was very surface, right? It was very dependent on other people. It was very accolade focused. It's almost like what I call the gift and the curse of when snowboarding, when you see someone that has a lot of talent and then they start getting noticed. And then I remember being on a chairlift, going to like, you know, practice and be like, oh, there's people here. I don't want to work on that trick, you know, because they're gonna be like, oh, like, why is he like falling on that trick? I can do that trick and he's making all this money. So it's like this like struggle in the brain. And I would say, like, because I had a light feel of myself, but it wasn't until like everything was gone, friends, everything, that was when I was able to reconcile the facade that I put on. So yes, I had a lot of confidence in a lot of things, but it was very fake. Hence the fragility of, you know, confidence. It was just a layer, where now it's kind of like more coming to terms of and just being excited about people in my life. And just seeing the relationships with a different level of value, right? And it's being more free from it. And I think, you know, it's something I still struggle with, right? It's been a super long journey, but yet it's still like very fresh. But that's yeah, I don't know. It's a tough one, right?
But, you know, one great example of it has to do with you experiencing the love that was put on you by your brother, by your girl, you know, to other people, because that's a sign that you're loving yourself, or you wouldn't have experienced it, you know. So back to, was it there all along? Who knows? But if it is or it isn't, you're not going to know it till you kind of feel a certain way about yourself, which is kind of cool.
No, and even that, like, a good example, like the love and also the story, was when I was in Austin. You know, I hadn't seen my kids for a while, and I was like, you know, just being divorced and stuff. So I was talking with my ex and just trying to, you know, connect with them, and schedules were messed up. And in my head, it was just kind of like, I literally was just like, oh, like, it just, you know, just infuriated. Um, but I remember my girlfriend telling me this. I'm like, dude, it's like don't be mad at her. You're the one that blew up your life. You're the one that like literally created this, lost everything. Kind of like own like your frustration situations because of like me. Like I was frustrated because I was like in Austin, no family, no money, no nothing, no like love. Like it was just kind of like that was me. She was just living her life trying to like, you know, handle the business and raise our kids. So it was just very like yeah, like the owning of it, right? To what you said of like the love, and then kind of shifting that and being like, no, like I own this. Therefore, if I own it, I can also change it, as opposed to like victim mentality of like, oh no, it's her, it's her, it's her. It's like you can't change someone, so it sucks if it's someone else and not you. So it is, you know, I had such a good juxtaposition of the hate and the like fear and then the love to be able to have like those moments.
It's a question that comes to mind that is like, if you had, you know, looking at you as a role model then, and if you had a little, maybe not a grom, but, you know, somebody you were maybe like mentoring, what advice would you give them that if there was, you know, what do you think is the most powerful tool that you were able to employ in your darkest hour?
Probably hope and belief and you know, self-love sounds so cliche, but like, man, like if you believe it, like, you know, back to what my mom taught me when I was young, like if you believe, then literally anything is possible, right? Like it's, but you have to be able to have that little belief. So I guess in the journey of like mentoring a Quran would be like, I guess same with kids, right? It's you want to protect them in certain ways, but you also know that by protecting them, you're exposing them to further, you know, items. It's almost like me being straight edge for 21 years was amazing. Like it allowed me to focus on snowboarding and focus on so many things. But when I tasted it later, it wasn't just like people in Europe when they, you know, drink a lot and then they like, you know, they have drinks when they're older. It's kind of like I was like all in, right? So it's just, if I was mentoring someone, it'd be this balance of creating these healthy environments to fail, to break, to live, right? Just kind of and encouraging them and creating the space for them to mess up and have successes and but love them either way, right? It's you know, and like you said, from a ground perspective, that's my kids, right? And it's like in life, right? It's so easy to give advice, but then when you go to apply it, right, it's just hard, right? There's just a lot of it's hard to watch someone you love or care for go through things, but then you also know that, at least for myself, I know that the hardest things I've gone through in my life, every single thing that I write down the list of pain, all of that is what has shaped me to be who I am today. So then it's also weird when you're mentoring someone, like to not want them to go through that is a weird thing because you know it's where your greatest gifts come from. So I don't know, back to this, like the hope and self-love to be able to go through and handle it and come out the other side.
Yeah, you know, we've talked about that, you know, the opportunities within challenge and how it kind of makes you stronger coming out the other side. You hit a keyword, environments, you know, that are out there to help foster and support and cultivate abilities. So I kind of want to use that as just an opportunity to segue into Bigvision a little bit and why it's so meaningful what we do, because that's really the space we try and occupy in the recovery world is creating the environment and the space to just kind of have fun, to express yourself, to find passions, to find fulfillment, stoke, whatever it might be. And that's such a critical thing, you know. So often, so much emphasis is only put on like the acute and what's diagnosable, what are the issues, but not really on what's the lifestyle component, what are the sides that are just creating the experience of life. And I think that's really a big focus that's often overlooked that we need to put more emphasis on. So that's again what Bigvision is all about, and why I'm so excited and grateful to be a part of that team. And why conversations like this, I think, are that much more important to have, you know, where it's not just about, and full disclosure, everybody, I am not an interviewer or talk show host. So, this isn't so dialed in.
You're talking head right now. You're
Here we go. But, so trying to think of the point about, but, it's kind of like, how do we have more conversations like this that, you know, we talk about a lot of other narratives that are going on, you know, How do we break stigmatizations? How do we change paradigms? How do we shift, flatten the curve of this epidemic and pandemic we're in? But, there's a wild curve of, this epidemic that we've been talking about the last few years, the opioid epidemic, which really is only the tip of the iceberg of the greater mental health maladaptive epidemic. So how do we flatten that curve? Same like social distancing is maybe it's the opposite. It's social interacting. It's environments. It's back to Stoke. It's back to fulfillment, community fun. So love to talk.
No, and yeah, I mean, and that's what I loved, even just checking out Instagram and everything was, it is that like the energy created when you're able to be around like-minded people, right? And you're able to just be open and know that what you've done isn't judged in a negative. It's more a bridge of familiarity, right? To be able to then do things. And, sometimes, for me, I needed to check out. I needed to get away. Some people, they just need like full on, like, love and healthy environment. Like back to what you're saying, like there's many paths to get there. But I think the one is feeling alone when that's not what's healthy for you, what you want. Right. And I think that's the worst.
Totally.
And it can just be one person. Right. And I mean, like I remember where I was sitting for each one of our chats, because it was a point in my life where like there wasn't a lot of people. But just like a healthy conversation that can totally like shift from a path that was going down, right? Like, and I remember that you and I had a conversation where I was talking to a friend and a job opportunity or potential had come up and it just wasn't in alignment with me. But yet I'm sitting there like I have nothing going on. Like this is like, there's it just us talking. It's like, oh, that's what lights me up, right? Like helping other people, doing what you're doing, just giving hope to other people. And all of that was just, that's what I wanted to be a part of. Right. Not just something that I knew was going to stretch me in ways and also re-expose me to things that I just didn't, there was nothing there in alignment. So yeah, I think I love what you guys are doing. I love this. I love the people that you're bringing on. I love the heart of New York City. Obviously, I've spent a ton of time there. Especially, like I said, during these times, just to connect with people and to give hope. And also, like you and I talked about, and I remember learning this even in rehab, was like, something like we have to have the vision to light us up, but also just some days you wake up and the smoothie is a win.
Totally.
It's like I woke up and I had a smoothie, and maybe I went for a walk.
So funny you say that. That movie Old School. And then I want to pause and come back to these comments that Eve are making, because it's really heavy. But it was like, where Will Ferrell's character is like, I'm going to Home Depot today. Like, that's like an exciting, event. It's like, sometimes in recovery and sobriety, that's a kick-ass thing, Like,
it is.
Just having a normal, great day.
Yeah.
By the way, just a little side note, I had total deja vu to like 20, 30 years ago, feeling very much like you were feeling. And I saw just a little shout out. I think I saw Vin LaVecchia pop up here for a moment ago. And I was like, holy shit. Because back in those days, like Vinny epitomized just pure stoke and goodness. Always had a smile on his face, such a pure heart. And was doing so many amazing things at that point. And his brother, whole family
still is,
for that matter.
Yeah, it still is.
Exactly, still is. Whole family still,
Yeah.
And I can so clearly recall just being in such pain, such, whatever, and looking at a guy like him, be like, what does that guy have that I don't have, that he's able to do that? And that kind of brings me back. By the way, Chaka sends a big shout out to you also.
Yeah.
I was talking to him last night. But I saw Eve said, I don't know if you saw that little comment. Thank you, for what you're doing, because, it would have been very meaningful for Isaac, her son, to have heard you speak. And I think that really illustrates the power you have and exactly what you're doing right now and the abilities we have moving forward, because it's setting a stake in where maybe at one point we're like, how do they, whatever, that grass is green around the other side, to wait, I'm here now. That is me. This is, and that's an amazing, amazing thing. So thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you, Eve.
So, just, I guess we have a few minutes left. Does anybody have any questions they want to type in at all, and Keir can answer them, or the floor, the court? The hill is yours.
That's something. Let's see. Let me check my other. Check my stuff.
All right. So you're out in just for everybody watching, you're in San Diego right now, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I was in Austin for 6 months, and then now back in San Diego, which has been awesome. Yeah. Yeah, Hemans. I'm down to play golf anytime, buddy.
So they're talking about easing up the restrictions.
What did you say about to your kids about experimenting with drugs and alcohol when they are teens?
It's a great question.
You know, one of my daughter's almost a teenager, so it's whatever I answer, that's kind of like, you know, I'm about ready to play that hand. You know, it's tough, right? I have mixed feelings because part of being straight edge and having that time of focus, and I really appreciated, like, even in school, like I was 16 years old in 9th grade, and I appreciated having extra years to like create my not just to mature. But in hindsight, that went super south. It went super left. I think, you know, that my neighbors growing up here in California, I think just a level of just being open and honest. And that's what I always wanted from my dad, of like, just own what you did, the good, the bad, and then trust that you've raised me to make good decisions, whether those decisions create a lot of pain or not. So I think the same thing with my kids is, or just advice is kind of, if you've journeyed in that path, and you think your kids can handle it, like owning just you as a human. I think we live in a time period where you can be authentic about yourself, and they're not going to lose respect for you. I think they'll probably gain it. So, and then experimenting, I'm no doctor, but I think just, if it's going to happen, I would always rather it be in as safe of an environment as humanly possible, or education. I mean, some of the drugs that I took, because I was already on drugs, I didn't fully understand the depths of how bad they were. Like, I mean, you kind of know, but it's just nice. I'm like, what was I thinking? Like, you know, for like ecstasy and stuff, that's an easy one for me. It's kind of like, you feel really good. Like, you do. And other ramifications of that, for sure. But some of the other questionable ones I did was kind of like, whoa. So I think back to it of just know your child, and only you can really get that. Only you know them. But if there's someone that can handle it, and you're able to meet them there, I think just that environment of feeling loved. And then if something happens, they're going to come to you, right? It's kind of like, that's the whole feeling of unconditional love. It's like, they're just mini versions of you. They're going to eventually get there. So letting them know you love them. And I think, yeah, that experimenting, it might go south, but that's also part of the journey.
It's a beautiful answer, because that's at the core of, you know, love, tightness, relationship, honesty.
Yeah. Let's say I'm curious as to where your hope comes from. God, life, circumstances. I think it's a mixture of everything. I think really it does go down to my mom when I was younger, just believing in me, you know, like literally, like I remember this one time where like a teacher gave me a D, and my mom went in and was like, she's like, "You're a racist." Like, because I was getting all A's in all the other classes, like whether she was or it wasn't, it was just like that belief that my mom had for me, I think also allowed me to trust myself. So that, and then I was definitely a Christian for, I don't know, 20 years, and just that seeing kind of a bigger picture of things, definitely kind of, gave hope. And I think it's the stacks though, right? It's because coming from a point when you have no hope, back to the smoothie, it's kind of like, what can I do to build and to have a little bit of hope and build and have so it's like stacking it. And so I think like anything in life, you stack successes. That's why that kernel that talks about making your bed in the morning to get a win. Like I hated making my bed, and once I understood that, I was like, I'm making my bed. So all the above. And everyone's different, right? Kind of like to your philosophy, everyone's different of like what allows that to happen. So from Luke, what up, Luke? The lie is that somehow a drug can get you that breakthrough easier, faster. Your success, Keir, was because of your charisma and artwork. Thanks, buddy. You know, who knows?
But I think that actually, that statement kind of goes back to that, almost that elusive inflection point of like, when did the dam break? When did they, whatever. And there might not have been a when, but there was a what then and a why that was going on, that it served a purpose. It was your medicine, false belief of that.
Yeah.
So how do we get past that?
Yeah, amen. Here's let's say let's ride again, even if it's just for a simple cruise. So the question is, do you think you'll ever ride again? If you need help, a helping hand, I got you. No, I appreciate it. I was hoping to come to Colorado this year and to cruise around and maybe make it to Tahoe. Shout out to you, Tyson. Yeah, I mean, it's for the longest time I lied to myself, like, oh, it's not fun, like, oh, whatever. And even seeing pictures of Luke shredding and doing tricks off little jumps, it's like, oh, that looks so fun. So yeah, I was hoping to go this year. Obviously other things came into play, but I definitely want to get out there. Want to expose my kids to it again and just create that environment. I mean, it's so life-giving. It's what's given me everything. All friends, everything was just that passion around something so simple and magical like snowboarding.
So what I would propose? Kind of pulling in a bunch of themes, having a vision for something to look forward to, having an objective or whatever. Let's make an objective of having a hell of a riding day sometime next year where we all come together and do something amazing and really just celebrate recovery, life, the beauty of being back to normal, which we are going to get back to, or a new normal, whatever that might be.
Yeah.
Let's look forward to that.
Amen to that. I love it. Let's make it happen.
Awesome.
And like I said, and I think even just kind of back to recovery. I think it's when I was driving over here, I was thinking like, I think when you veer, to use that language, you kind of want to get back, but it's like you're never going back, and back isn't the point, right? It's like our life are like these sections, I think, and it's so even a new normal, like as what we're in right now, it's everything. It's going to be different, right? Like. But as humans, we adapt, we adjust. There's so much opportunity and magic out there through all the chaos. And I'm not saying that to downplay any of the pain and the hurt that's happening now, and it's terrible. But there's a canvas that's waiting to be painted, right? And let's paint.
I think that right there is such the metaphor to kind of just sum so much up. Like, yes, we can escape the pain, the challenges that are out there, the reality of what's going on, but that doesn't mean that there can't still be beauty, optimism, hope, wonderful things that are going on, keeping our eye on the prize, why we're doing it. So thanks for kind of bringing that back, because that's really at the core of it. Why are we doing everything we're doing? For a good purpose. That's almost the opposite of the path we both took when we made that left turn in Albuquerque. We went down, the rabbit's hole of, we lost sight of purpose or why. Everything was just that immediate. So, yeah, I think that's a really beautiful metaphor.
Yeah. Well, and I think, I don't know, at least for me, I look back at all the decisions that I'm like, whoa, that was questionable. Like at the point in time, it was the best decision. Like it's and you and I were talking about even just like a lot of the magic opportunities that create amazing things. They don't get credit, right? Because there's like so many of them, like little random things. But it's like when you go like, ooh, when I did that one thing, then the weight of the world like just set on it. So it's I like to pretend like every decision was made from the best that I could do at that point in time.
Totally.
But amen.
I'll wrap it up with this, which is another memory I have of another conversation where we were talking about, this actually might have just been the other day, like a definition of luck. Because it also comes up, and back to the narratives. Like, I mean, I could have written books about my bad luck, or my good luck, or whatever, how fortunate other circumstances. But one of the definitions I love about that is like good luck or bad luck is just the intersection of opportunity and action or inaction, and that's going to determine the path. So to remain mindful of that, where are the opportunities? What are the actions I need to take? And what's the situation I'm in? And what are the best moves I need to make kind of within it? Those are like, I guess, the key navigation points.
Yeah. And on that level of even just back to what I was saying earlier, like usually the bad luck creates the pain, and the pain creates the magical transformation, which then creates the kind of elevation and expansion. So therefore, sometimes the bad luck is actually the good luck.
Yeah, the
Not
challenge.
Johnny Optimist, but it's the reality of it. For me.
Yeah. And I think that has a lot to do with the mindfulness you have now and ability to take stock. And, you wouldn't be where you are if you didn't have the path and journey you got to, but it's more importantly where you're going. Wow, it could get very nebulous and woven with all this and go on. We kind of have to wrap it up because I think we're going to get the Instagram chop off. But I can't thank you enough for taking the time and just, kind of sharing some inspiration, sharing your honesty, your story. And yes, I mean, it is impacting people on a daily basis. So thank you so much for that. And really looking forward to sharing some turns on the hill, in the water, wherever it might be.
Yeah. Amen to that. No, and thank you. Thank you for even, like I said, back in November when we connected, and what you're doing now and inspiring other kids and the youth, even the whole program. It's awesome. So, huge props to you guys and much love.
It really is an amazing story behind Bigvision and how it was formed and Eve's vision to do that. So back to just a little plug to wrap it up about Bigvision. Yes, we are a community for young adults to really get back into life, to recreate, to have fun, to learn about how we're going to get fulfilled. It's not just about not picking up a drug or a drink. It's about getting back into life. So you can check our website, bigvision.nyc. Right now, we're doing everything virtually. So on our website is our events schedule is updated every week. So if we get towards the end of the week, it might look a little short, but tune back in and you'll see it, each week build back up. And we hope to see you soon, either virtually or in person. Take care, everybody. Take care, Keir. It was great talking to you as always. And
you as well.
We will see you soon.
All right. Have a good day, guys. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.